Welcome to Round Hill Radio. Through our conversations, we discover the holy and the ordinary, look for moments of grace and peace, and redefine what we're talking about. We talk about faith. Hey, Ed.
Hey, Leslie.
Welcome back to the podcast.
Welcome back.
It's so great to have you back.
We're here.
Lillian did such a beautiful job while you were gone, holding
Fantastic.
down the fort. She is so fun and so interesting and so inspiring to talk to. We had a great time.
Agreed.
And we are back here on week something. It's on the
Yeah.
next page. 41.
Yeah, we were just talking about this with the staff, that it's to be at week 41 at this point seems pretty amazing.
It's almost done.
It's exciting.
It is exciting. Good stuff. Look, we've kept up with something for 41 weeks.
Wow. Who knows what else we could do?
I'm inspired. And our reading today is from Mark 1, verses 1 through 15. And I'm going to make sure this is nice and clear, because I got some feedback that this was less than clear, which thank you for that feedback. I want to make sure everyone can hear everything.
Discerning listeners.
Thank you so much, genuinely. Here we go. The beginning of the good news about Jesus Christ, God's Son, happened just as it was written about in the prophecy of Isaiah. Look, I am sending my messenger before you. He will prepare your way, a voice shouting in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord, make his paths straight. John the Baptist was in the wilderness calling for people to be baptized, to show that they were changing their hearts and lives and wanted God to forgive their sins. Everyone in Judea and all the people of Jerusalem went out to the Jordan River and were being baptized by John as they confessed their sins. John wore clothes made of camel's hair with a leather belt around his waist. He ate locusts and wild honey. He announced, "One stronger than I am is coming after me. I'm not even worthy to bend over and loosen the strap of his sandals. I baptize you with water, but he will baptize you with the Holy Spirit." About that time, Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee, and John baptized him in the Jordan River. While he was coming up out of the water, Jesus saw heaven splitting open and the Spirit, like a dove, coming down on him. And there was a voice from heaven. "You are my Son, whom I dearly love. In you I find happiness." At once, the Spirit forced Jesus out into the wilderness. He was in the wilderness for 40 days, tempted by Satan. He was among the wild animals, and the angels took care of him. After John was arrested, Jesus came into Galilee, announcing God's good news, saying, "Now is the time. Here comes God's kingdom. Change your hearts and lives, and trust this good news." Well, goodness, a lot of things happened there.
The beginning.
That was so much. So we have John the Baptist with his, I love how they describe him, his sort of eccentricities.
Oh, yeah.
He's a man of the woods.
He has his own dress code.
I love it. The locusts and wild honey.
Yep.
And then he baptizes Jesus. And God goes, "That guy,
Yep.
that's my guy," which
My
I love.
son. Yep.
My son, who I love this, "Who in you I find happiness."
Yeah, that's a different translation. Really
I haven't
different.
heard that one, right? It's what? In you I'm well pleased.
Usually it's "For thou art my beloved son, in whom I am well pleased."
Yeah, that's interesting. And then Jesus goes into the wilderness for 40 days, 40 being the number for transformation, is that correct?
Yeah, completion. It's a sort of a rite of passage. 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, 40 days for Elijah, he spent 40 days on his way, he was running away. But here's Jesus using this as a prelude to something, right?
And so then is this really beginning Jesus' ministry? Is that, you were saying, the beginning, right?
This is sort of the last thing that happens before the ministry begins.
Okay.
Or we could say this is maybe a really important part of the ministry, right? That the ministry includes the retreat.
Yeah.
And the retreat is kind of the necessary prelude to whatever's going to happen after it.
He's building.
Yep.
He's building, he's preparing, he's getting all of his proverbial ducks in a row.
Yes, he is.
It's important, right? You can't just start something from nothing. You have to prepare and sit and think, and it makes me think about even our own 52 for the journey, how much preparing and sitting and thinking and designing and thinking and redesigning and thinking before we launched this, and how much that turned out well. in some ways, despite us. I was talking with Lillian and how interesting, we've had these sort of lineups of scripture and life in really beautiful ways we 100% did not plan.
Right? It's so interesting that there have been these convergences, right? And it was funny because I think just the last couple of days, I have run into the word synchronicity multiple times. This, and serendipity is actually another word that I've run into, but these moments of, what do we want to call them? Happenstance, fortunate, happy accidents. People have all kinds of words to describe them, but something that converge. There was a little bit of more planning around this.
Yeah.
Because September 7th is our celebration Sunday. So we really begin to launch into some programs. Some things are coming to a conclusion. Some things are starting and launching. So it felt like this was a good text to have.
Sure.
Right? For this kind of hinge moment, right?
Yeah.
Something's closing, something's opening.
Those pivot points that we all have in life. Yeah, you were mentioning that in staff meeting. I love that. So our question in our journal, let's stop trying to hit the desk, says, the public ministry of Jesus began in the desert. What is the wild place into which God is calling you in order to make a fresh start? So I have to tell you that wild place just makes me immediately think of Where the Wild Things Are.
Oh, yes. Isn't that a great story?
By Connecticut resident Maurice Sendak.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
I drive past, there's a, up in Ridgefield, there's a highway, there's a sign for him, and I passed that this morning.
Love it. Yep.
But that wild place, the wildness of God calling you to make a fresh start, that sort of, you were saying, you almost said retreat. Right? Into quiet and thinking. And
I'm going to use another word that I happened to come across this weekend.
Yeah.
And this person is a creative person who I think works mostly in the music world. But he was saying that he has to make intentional decisions from time to time to disappear. And I usually use the word retreat for something like this.
Sure.
Right? If somebody disappears, that's not usually a good thing.
No, not generally.
Right? So I always like words that are used, kind of in a fresh way.
Sure.
And so this person just said that from time to time, he does disappear. And I think he lets his family know
I would imagine
where he's going.
I appreciate that.
But otherwise, he's gone. And in a lot of these texts, there is a deliberate decision either by a group of people or by an individual to disappear. So Elijah actually wanted to disappear because he was in trouble.
Sure.
Right? So somebody was tracking him down. But his disappearance led to a moment of contact, right, with the elusive presence. So he couldn't disappear himself from everyone or everything. And I think it's interesting that the word used in the translation that you just read was that the Spirit forces Jesus, which implies he doesn't want to disappear.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to go. In the King James, it says, and the Spirit driveth him into the wilderness. Like he has to be really goaded to get
pushed.
Right?
Yeah.
And when he's there, he goes through all this experience of temptation. What is that about? Is he being tempted to use his powers for personal gain? It's a little hard. It's not really described, so we could fill it in a number of ways. But the part about this that really intrigues me is he was with the wild beasts, and the angels ministered unto him. That's the King James version, right? So he's anything but alone.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
things happening.
A lot of things going on.
Yeah.
Satan's out there. The wild animals are out there. Angels are out there.
It's a party in the woods.
There's a lot going on. And
the desert.
Right?
Desert.
So I think this is an interesting story for this time of year.
Okay.
Because one of the things is that we're generally being herded into more communal spaces, right? It's the classroom and it's the team sport and it's church and it's, there's high and holy days happening for different. And so we're gathering. We're with people all the time. Yeah. And we're trying to figure out, schedules and It's a
Yeah.
fascinating time of year.
Oh, yeah.
And right in the middle of that, Jesus, steps out,
Yeah.
not necessarily because he wants to, but again, it's not really an experience in which he's alone. And that sort of struck me about reading this story. He's kind of with a community of people, or not just people. He's with a community of creatures.
Yeah.
And I think it's this time where he really gets to listen to some unusual voices in an unusual space.
Yeah.
And Rick Rubin, who's a great creative person, has written one of the best books I believe it's called The Creative Habit. But he talks about the fact that being creative has nothing to do with the end process,
Oh, sure.
right?
Yeah.
It's all about putting yourself in a place where the magic can happen that leads ultimately to the artistic
Yeah.
creation, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
And so I'm just thinking about how much we need that in our lives. And one of the tricky things at this time of the year is that it can seem like that space we need to listen to the wilder voices, the undomesticated voices, can actually get pushed out.
Right.
And we don't want that to happen. We want that to be part of the picture too.
Yeah.
Right? Along with the other voices that are always going to be part of our lives, right? Family and institutions and so on. So I just don't want us, I don't want to lose track of that.
I'm really struck by this idea because I feel like, to go into retreat or disappear, as your person said, it makes me think about, my preconceived notion about that is to be solitary.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I am really struck by this idea that he had plenty of company,
others,
but it wasn't the usual voices. It wasn't the noise that could get in the way.
Yeah.
It wasn't the blocks.
One of the things Rick Rubin says to do if you're blocked about something, take a book you're reading and just open it up to a random page.
Oh, yeah?
Take the first line that you see and consider that it's a line of advice that's being given to you from someone you don't know.
Oh, cool.
Complete stranger.
Nice. I love that.
Isn't that a fun idea?
I love that idea because I feel like when you're trying to sort of, air quote, be creative,
You're right.
Sometimes you just have to bring chaos in. You need to just mix up we've talked about this, mix up your routine, mix up your habits. Because sometimes I feel like I can get into kind of like a groove, but I don't mean that in a positive way. I can get rut. That's the word.
Yep.
And I have to shake myself out of it by doing something potentially silly or weird or bring an element of chaos in a positive way.
Yeah. So if you're looking at it, you're reading a book and you just pull out a line, suddenly, this is not a trusted voice, right? You don't know this person. And it's important to have trusted voices.
Of course.
Right? We invest a lot in our personal relationships and in our connections with hopefully healthy institutions to make them healthier. But in this moment, that's not what Jesus is going for. You've got creatures, wild creatures. You've got angels. Those I would describe an angel, as a non-human intelligence.
Okay.
I don't know what category we're going to put Satan in. And, one of the dangers of the word Satan is that we tend to think again of an evil, a source of evil who's propagating evil. But actually, the original meanings of that term, or some of the resonance of that term, is more a tester, an adversary.
Okay.
So you go back to the story of Job in the Old Testament, where God and the adversary actually are kind of in a kind of partnership with each other. And that's how Job winds up being tested so severely, because God and this adversary work together to see, well, let's find out what Job is really made of.
Wow.
So here I get the sense that Jesus is, it's somehow important that he be exposed to these other voices.
Okay.
Made me, think about the way in which we do often go from, in terms of ministry, we go from seminary pretty much to serve in a church, right?
Yeah.
Certainly it was my path, and it is for most people still. It makes me wonder, what if we took 40 days before going to serve the church or the community or the nonprofit, whatever. But not just 40 days, but we exposed ourselves to voices that are not in our normal bandwidth. How would we find them? What would we do? Would we reach out to some community leaders and say, I know you don't even know me, but I'm about to go off on a 40-day retreat. What do you think is the most important question I ought to think about? Right? Whoever gets asked, from the community, right? Those kinds of questions. So
I love that.
anyway, that's kind of what I'm pondering.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a very unusual beginning to a story. Normally there's like a nice predictable arc. Jesus went to school, and he got a graduate degree, and he went and did an internship, and not this time.
The way that the story reads, that the Spirit had to sort of drive him or force him out, makes me think that Jesus was expecting, okay, I'll go, I'll get baptized, and then I will begin.
I'll start.
Yeah.
I know what to do.
Here I go. And the Spirit's like, get thee out.
Yep, exactly. And, a lot of times, especially in the Old Testament, when God directs people to do something, it usually is get up. It's almost always an imperative.
Yeah.
Get up, get out, get going.
Now.
Yeah. So whether it's Abraham and Sarah, or it's Jonah, or it's Elijah, over and over again, it's just usually 2 or 3 imperatives right in a row. And it's kind of that way for Jesus here. Yeah. And I think the desert also is a suggestive place, because obviously it can be a forbidding place. It's a lean environment where creatures have to really work hard, right? To kind of make something out of the environment that could be nourishing. But here's Jesus, who's going into a different, we might say into a different headspace.
Yeah, there you go.
Right?
Yeah.
And what is it that he's going to carry with him from that experience that's going to animate the rest of his life? That's a question I would have of this.
So my question is, because this to me makes me think of a sabbatical, right? Setting aside time to think and dig deep, and like you said, get out of your normal headspace in your normal environment. Let's say for the rest of us
who aren't heading off to Death Valley anytime
who don't
soon.
get Death Valley, who maybe don't have sabbaticals on our schedule right now, how would you suggest that we could create a wild place as a regular habit? Or how could we create a wild place within our own context of everyday family life? So
my sister, who had a very large family, has a large family. When they were all young, and I don't know how that they managed all that, 6 boys.
Oh my!
There was a time when she would disappear every day.
Get it?
And she would sort of sink into a big book. And that was a time when she just, could not be disturbed. And I was reading recently that, just the act of reading can be very soothing. But let's take this model for a second. And I like that model. It's good to be soothed, right, from time to time.
Totally.
Right? However, to answer your question, one small way of going about this is to say, by the way, I think there are a lot of little ways we can do this. But one of the little ways would be to say, is there a book by an author I've never read, or from a country I've never read? Is there an author who comes from a part of the world I've never visited, may never visit, but I want to hear that voice? And what would that be like? And to me, that could be, you could play with that in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And I think even in terms of, I know that what some people choose to do when they travel the same route every day is they go a completely different direction and ask themselves, what are 3 things that I notice when I'm going on this direction that I've never seen before, that is completely new, and challenge themselves to do that. What is the question? What is there one question that you wish someone would ask you that's never been asked of you? One question. Because I think those require a little bit of oomph to do them, a little bit of energy, but it's all about putting ourselves in a place of unfamiliarity. And I think that's part of what the desert is about. So it's two things. It's getting into a different space, which may not require movement because you can do that reading a book. But it's also asking ourselves some questions that maybe we haven't wanted to ask or face that could also be part of that experience. And I'm just thinking about doing it with travel and reading and questions, right?
Yeah,
To
I
sort
love
of
that.
start off there.
Yeah, because I remember discussing this in college with a professor of mine who we had this class that was about, it was like keyboard skills for Dalcroze Eurythmics. It's a very specific class, but really all it would consist of is him sitting on the piano and like telling us about interesting articles he read that week. It was like the entire class.
Oh, wow.
But it was super great because we were talking about how when you drive to work, you forget the drive to work.
Yes.
Because you do the same drive to work every single day. And
Yep.
like to your point of taking a different route, like shocks you out of, because we as humans notice differences, right? And so it shocks you out of that. So you're in a whole different headspace when you get to work.
Love it.
And I think to your point, those little things that we can do that kind of like give a little spark to our system and to our brain, so we're noticing different things.
So the writer Frederick Buechner, by the way, another serendipity moment. I just came across the term creative shock last week.
Behold.
So well done.
Thanks.
The writer Frederick Buechner really created a big wave in literary religious publishing back in the 70s when he told the story. It was his memoir, basically. He had tried to be a fiction writer, and he was never really a great fiction writer. Okay. He wrote a memoir, and he was an ordained Presbyterian pastor, but he had not served a church. He chose to write. When he wrote this, he wrote it about the death of his father, who had died in a very sad way. And he hadn't ever really considered all the implications of that. He had never really told the story. So at one point, he was blocked in telling the story. Kind of came to that moment that you had just asked. So what would you need to do that would be really different? So he started writing the story with his non-dominant hand.
Oh, interesting.
And all of this emotion flooded out of him.
Wow.
That hadn't happened when he was writing quickly and, with his right hand.
Yeah.
So I think, again, it's the power of difference. What is different? What can be made different about this situation? And I think we're also discovering, as people get into a certain time of life where they feel like, wow, time is just flying.
Yeah.
Apparently, one of the reasons for that is it's because of the habits that we've formed. There's not enough difference to sort of slow us down.
Yeah.
Right. So things are just trucking along because we do the same pattern every day,
Sure.
which feels great and can be, again, soothing. But from time to time, I think there's a lot of benefit to be derived from doing something completely different. And I think maybe, it's interesting. I never really thought about it until we having this conversation, but maybe Jesus hated the desert.
I mean, he got shoved out there.
I'm saying, don't put me out there. I'm a city guy, I'm a small village guy, and you are throwing me out here into the deep water, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so I just think that, hey, he came from Nazareth of Galilee. He was a small town guy.
Yeah.
And now he's going to go out and spend 40 days in the wilderness. I mean, it's potentially disorienting.
I prefer not to do that personally,
So, I think we found some other ways that we can disorient ourselves without having to go for 40 days. But
I love that. And to be honest, there's a playfulness to them, which I appreciate, like the act of writing with your non-dominant hand can feel very silly.
Sure.
But it was so powerful in the story you just told. And so I think it's sort of funny how bringing in these elements of chaos or these elements of randomness they can feel potentially silly when we start, but they can unlock so much in our psyche, in our creativity, in our minds, in what we notice. I think it's, if you need permission to play, this is your permission to play.
Here it is. Go for it. Yeah. I love the fact that you pointed out that it can feel silly or maybe pointless or, I don't have the time to do this.
Right.
But again, going back to Rick Rubin's comment about the creative process, what we're looking to do is actually, and you'll smile at this because it's a term I've used overused many times, but he said it's all about becoming a good receiver.
You do use that a lot.
And so the trick is to create the space.
Yeah.
Because he said, actually, I love this image. He said the universe is like a conveyor belt. And it is constantly sending us messages and gifts and ideas. And so the question is there anybody home to receive the idea?
Right.
And even if someone's home, is there any space for it?
Yeah.
If we've already filled up the space, now that could be with a lot of things, right? Yeah. But if there's no space at all for the newness to come in, then newness is not going to come in.
No.
And actually, he makes a comment, which I have heard other creative people say as well. It'll go elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, this was a comment that the great dancer Martha Graham made. She said, it's your job basically to put yourself in a position where you can receive this. And she said, if you don't let it, it's not coming back.
Yeah.
It will go. Now, it's not to say that other messages won't come,
Sure.
right? Because I think that's kind of the nice thing about what Rick Rubin is saying. The conveyor belt keeps bringing more,
coming.
right? But don't lose the thing that wants to find you.
Yeah.
There's something that wants to find us. It's what one of my friends calls, good surprises.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in a way, maybe what Jesus found out in the wilderness was a good surprise, that actually he could spend some time with wild animals out there.
Yeah.
He could spend some time with angels out there. And maybe that openness to that wildness made itself, into a kind of a home for him, so that he carried that with him wherever he was, didn't have to go back to the desert all the time.
I think as a final area of this topic, that I think we can't have this discussion without discussing distraction.
Mm-hmm.
Because I will only speak for myself, am stunningly good at keeping myself distracted.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm trying to do something else, I'm like, oh, let me listen to a podcast. Let me listen to music. Let me have rather sometimes as a way of just not having to maybe think too deeply. If just things feel overwhelming, I'll use that, like you said, for soothing, right? For enjoying myself while I'm doing something else. I have recently been trying to not do that. The example I will give was I was actually doing some weeding at the house.
Yep.
Because my lawn guy wanted an exorbitant price for it. I was like, no, thank you. So I was out there, hands and knees and gloves and the whole 9 yards. And I couldn't find my AirPods, which was actually a gift, because I was like, well,
and the Spirit driveth her into the wilderness.
Pretty much. Yeah. With the bugs and the weeds and the whole thing.
Yep.
And during that time, I was just having some thinking time. And I actually, during that time, made a connection of two ideas I had been kind of just contemplating about. And it was really, you could have seen the light bulb go off above my head.
That's great.
It was like a bing. And I think for me, as someone who, is constantly on devices, I'm just going to own that. Choosing to step away from that, even if I'm reading a book on my device, sometimes it just feels like I always have a screen in front of my face and it's horrible. So for me, part of that bringing in the randomness or noticing is sometimes not about, is about breaking the habit, but it's breaking the habit of having something constantly going on in front of me and just
yep.
And letting it all settle down a little bit.
Well said. What's the line in Alice in Wonderland where someone says, it's too much of a muchness?
Much of the muchness,
right?
Yeah.
And I think we recognize this widely now about our addiction to technology in many different forms.
Yeah.
To step away from it, actually, there's a different kind of experience of being soothed when we're away from it.
Yeah.
So it's not like, because I've kind of gotten into this habit too of, looking at things too much. And it can be a kind of a restful place in a way, or a slightly stimulating place.
Sure.
Right? But there's a different kind of satisfactory stimulation that comes from not being part of that, because now there are inner voices and inner responses and emotions that want to surface, and they want some space in the sun.
Yeah.
And the only way to give them that space is to move away from whatever else is occupying us in that time.
Yeah.
And it can be a device. It can also be a certain emotional color that we're just using a whole lot, much too much. So that it's being conscious of where we have allowed ourselves to overindulge in a particular way of being, stepping away from that, and maybe going back to your question, then pushing it a little bit, which is what happens to Jesus, and say, I'm not just going to have downtime here, but what I'm doing is different. I'm doing this differently. And it's that difference, I think, that's stimulating in a different way.
Yeah.
And it's activating. We're creative by nature. And that word should never be restricted only to what we typically call the arts, right? It's we are creative by virtue of being human.
Absolutely.
So every time we create a meal or create a schedule or create whatever it is, there's so many ways that we're doing that. But again, the opportunity to dive into a different part of the pool or the pond or whatever it is what can yield a whole different sense of what it means to be alive.
I love that. I love it so much. And we would love to hear from you. How are you choosing to get into your own wilderness this week? I'm going to definitely try to put down the screens even more. Let's keep it going. I'm a big advocate for technology, but it's like, it's a tool and you can set down the tool.
There you go.
We're getting our way there. And we'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much for joining us today. Round Hill Radio is brought to you by the friends and members of Round Hill Community Church. For more information, please visit roundhillradio.org.
If you enjoyed this podcast, there are a few things that you can do that would make a big difference to us. Like the video, subscribe if you aren't, and click the notification bell and select all. Thank you.